Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined today by Deckard.
Deckard was the main character, right?
Yeah, in the first one.
I don't know, as soon as you said that name, my brain was like, wait, who was he again? Oh, right, he's the main dude. Okay. I sort of have like a mental block over names. It's just like, oh, a name? Throw that out.
Yeah, well, and he's in the second movie, but he's not the main character.
Right.
So, yeah, we watched both Blade Runner movies, Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. So yeah, what are your initial thoughts, I guess, on both movies? Like, which one is better? And then we'll get into detail on the first one and then the second one.
Okay.
I've seen these before, so it's not like, yeah.
I definitely like the second one better.
Yes, I can agree.
Like, I don't know. Most of the movies that we've watched, you've either warned me that they were going to be terrible, or I went in expecting them to be really good.
Yeah.
But this one was just kind of like...
You didn't know what to expect?
Yeah. I mean... I never knew the concept of Blade Runner. And so going off the title, I expected a bit more action because, Blade Runner, that's an awesome title.
It definitely sounds more like an action kind of movie, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I expected like ninjas running on rooftops or something in like cyberpunk era or whatever. I didn't get that, and it was kind of really
it never really it never really gives a good reason why they're called Blade Runners. It's just the people who hunt replicants are Blade Runners. Okay, why though? Like, what?
Yeah, there are no blades.
Their signature weapon is not a blade. They typically use guns, so...
I was expecting, like, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance style, like, cyborg ninjas hunting down androids, like...
Yeah, that is not at all what these movies are.
Yeah, and so when I was watching the first movie, it just... I don't know, I didn't really like it. It just kind of seemed boring to me. Like, I get it. But...
Yeah, I can definitely see, like, the first one, like, the second movie definitely has a lot more going on with the plot and, like, the, kind of character arc kind of stuff. Like, the first movie, the main character is kind of boring as a character. He's just, like, a dude who hunts down replicants, and I feel like he's not that interesting beyond that. Like, they're definitely going for a, like, sort of... film like a film noir, like a mystery kind of style, which is cool, and they're going for that style with that character and everything too. But like, I don't know, he just didn't feel like... I think the first movie, the thing that's most interesting is just the world building and the setup of like this future. I think is really interesting, and the idea of the replicants and like how everything works, the world. But then when the actual plotting of the movie, for the most part, is kind of boring. Like, a lot of the plot itself of what happens in the first movie, there's really not a lot to it, but it takes 2 hours to get through. Like, it's weird because this movie, the first one is like 2 hours long. The second one is like 2 hours and like 40 minutes or something, like significantly a decent amount longer. But the first one almost feels longer than the second one because there's just so much of like nothing happening. Like, I don't know, it just feels so like it just drags so much, even though it's only 2 hours,
Yeah, I mean, like, they go into a lot of detail with it, which is nice, but it always... It just makes it seem slow a lot of times, which is...
Yeah. Whereas I feel like there's always something interesting going on in 2049.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I just remember, when was the first one made? Do you know?
1982.
Okay. And it's set in 2019, the far, far
2019.
future.
Which is now like a few years ago.
Which, when watching the first movie, I just noticed the Atari billboard that's there, which I found so funny.
Well, right, because
Atari's like nowhere to be found.
Well, right, because at the time that the movie was made, Atari was a big thing. So they thought, oh, in the future, in 2019, it might still be like a big gaming console or something, like a big, like, you know, more advanced version of it, but like it might still be a thing.
But then, even in the second movie, they still have an Atari billboard. It's like, oh, they're continuing that.
Right, because that movie is based on the world that was presented in the first movie, not based on our current world. You know what I mean? So it makes sense they would kind of go off that.
Yeah, I just found it really funny that like the ancient one-off console Atari is just there.
Yeah, in this world it
I don't actually know if it was only one-off, but
in this world it continued and like became a really popular gaming system for many years to come, you know.
It was certainly an interesting thing for world building.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. Yeah, also there's something interesting about how, because the city is LA, but it literally does not resemble modern day LA like very much at all. Like there's definitely parts of the city that might somewhat, but like, you know, when you think of LA, do you think of constant raining? No. You know, you think of like sunshine and like you're next to the beaches, and like palm trees and like, I don't know, whatever else. Like you don't like Hollywood and everything, but like you don't think of like constant raining.
Or you certainly don't think of everybody speaks Japanese and there's Japanese billboards everywhere.
Well, yeah, it's like every billboard they have like it says something in English and Japanese, which there's definitely some Japanese influence in certain things. Like even in this, like the second one, I think the whole like fake girlfriend thing, the Joy. Seems like a very Japanese type of thing. Like, I'm pretty sure I've heard that they even have stuff similar to that. Not quite as advanced, obviously, but like, where it's like they have like a thing. I've heard of things like that in Japan. I don't know. But
I mean, I was going to argue with you, but then I remembered I literally have seen online a guy that, like, I think it was Japanese, maybe it was just Asian, I don't know. But he was developing an android as lifelike as possible, and he considered her his daughter. It was really creepy, and it was like full on uncanny valley stuff.
But so I think the main sort of thing with these movies, though, is so the main themes, at least, that carry across the two movies is the idea of, obviously, you know, what does it mean to be human, right? That's the sort of main theme, because these replicants aren't treated as humans. They're essentially, you know, treated as machines, right? But they're made to the point where they're actually genetic. They're not like, you know, metal or robotic or anything like that. They're actually genetic and like actually have emotions and everything. So, you know, is it right to treat them as machines? Probably not, you know. And that's sort of the interesting thing that the movies raise, the interesting question.
This was something that I was questioning a lot during both movies, because it was like you're led to believe that they're like a machine, you know, recreation of human, right? But everything that they show is like genetic engineering. So they're less like they were built and more like, you know, they were grown as test tube babies.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly how it works. So obviously, you have like different departments. Like, oh, there's you meet the one guy who like specifically makes eyes, and like, there's different like things. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, but it was so weird because like they did that, and obviously they're not exactly human because they keep mentioning how they don't feel pain or they have greater physical abilities and whatnot.
Well, I think they do feel pain, don't they?
I don't think so. Because, like, even in the second movie, he, like, literally glued his cut back together.
I don't know. I thought they did, though, because, like, there was a scene in the first movie where the one guy, like, stabs a nail through his hand, and it seemed like he was in pain.
Right, I do remember that.
That's what, I think they do. It's just maybe they have a higher like pain tolerance than regular humans, maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah, they just set that one distinction for like to separate humans from replicants when it's like, but wasn't the entire purpose to make them as close to human as possible?
Right. They just enhance their like strength and stuff so that they are like good for like workers, basically. Like, oh, they can lift a lot of weight, so that's great for to do like manual labor and stuff. They can but also they create them with like short lifespans, so that way they if they only live for 4 years, there's less of a chance of them really developing a personality and wanting to like kind of rebel or something like that, because it's like which that's, I mean, obviously the sort of the main plot of the first movie is that they want to try to see if they can get their lifespans, extended.
I guess the whole point of it is just they designed a new sort of human that they could convince people that they were allowed to not treat as human.
Yeah,
so they could be used, basically.
Well, it's kind of like it is obviously slavery, right? But it's kind of an interesting sense of like the one guy in the second movie says something along the lines of like, societies are like built on like disposable laborers or something like that, or I don't know, whatever, right? You think about like in history, a lot of these like great societies, were built on like slavery, or like people, working class people, kind of being treated like terrible, even if it wasn't necessarily slavery. In some points it was, some points it wasn't, but like, kind of forcing lower people who are considered lower than you to do the work that nobody else wants to. And it's sort of like what these movies are presenting is sort of what would be the next logical step for that kind of thing. Like, oh, the world doesn't have slavery anymore. People actually have like rights and stuff now. Oh, well, we still want to be able to force people to do work for us. So let's just create people, like,
yeah, we still need cheap labor, so I'm going to grow my own.
I'm going to create my own people. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, I don't know. I just think that concept is really interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the first movie, the main thing I really like about it is it does a good job at setting up like the general setting and atmosphere of this future is really interesting, I think. And like the city, what the city looks like there's a lot of areas where it's like a lot of futuristic like movies or whatever, where it's like, oh, here's this same city but in the future. It's like they make it seem like everything is like this extreme technological advancement, but in this movie a lot of things I feel like are more advanced in a logical way. Like a lot of rooms and buildings still look the same as they would now, but with like an advanced, like, I don't know, light in the room that's like a little bit more advanced looking. But like the rest of it's, it kind of, it's almost like it's expanding into like futuristic technology and what would probably be a more natural way in real life, where it's like,
yeah, I get what you mean.
I don't know. So I think that creates kind of a cool aesthetic.
Well, yeah, because sometimes when you settings in the future are just like, everything's chrome, or this white room that lights up, all the walls light up so it's never in the dark or whatever, or just this very like sterile feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But this doesn't have that at all. Like, everything seems more industrial, or just like anytime he's outside, and it's obviously constant raining, but it still looks grimy, and like everything has pipes on it. Like, everything has to be functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think in a way is, I really like that. I think that style is interesting, and I think it fits the world they're trying to present really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are some of the main things I really like about the first movie. That, and I think the main sort of, I kind of like the main villain, the guy, like his, especially like that moment where he like dies, like I think was a pretty powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And his like final words and everything, like, and he's like thinking back on his life, and he's like, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe, and all those moments will be lost in time, like tears and rain. That I think is one of the best parts of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the first movie is just kind of just annoying to get to that point, because it just very, a lot of the scenes in the movie, like there's this scene where he's like looking at an image and he's like, enhance, move over, and it's like takes forever, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
We get it. Showcase your voice command thing. Like, yeah, we get it. It's the future. You can control stuff with your voice.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also one thing I find interesting about that first movie, though, in the world building, is how brutal the idea of the Blade Runners is. Like, he goes to that woman who he suspects is one of the replicants, like the snake lady, and he starts chasing her down the street. She's chasing her with a gun. People aren't like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, this guy's running by with a gun, what's happening? Like, people seem to be generally pretty calm with it, and then he just shoots her, and it's like, like in middle of the streets, and it's like,
yeah,
people aren't freaking out as much as you'd think.
Yeah, it's more just like they kind of shy away from him, or like, oh, what was that noise?
Or maybe they like expect things like that to happen. They're probably just like, oh, it's just another Blade Runner killing another replicant. Okay.
Yeah, because need to make sure I'm out of the line of fire, and that's it. Yeah. That's all I need to do and go about my day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because like in the first movie, replicants aren't even legal on Earth.
Right.
Like they're off-world. They're workers off-world, but they're not even legal on Earth. So that's like the whole point, is any that are on Earth, we got to take them out or retire them.
Yeah, it's not called execution, it's called retirement.
Yeah, because that makes it sound nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do kind of like somewhat of the story that Deckard goes through in the movie, like his arc, kind of. I mean, I don't think it's handled as well as it could have been, but I like the idea that it's like at the beginning, he's just kind of like, he does his job, he retires replicants, he doesn't really think much of it, but then he meets a replicant who's like, he falls in love with, and then that kind of makes him start to rethink things, and then he has that final moment where the one that was seemed like it was trying to kill him, like saved his life, and then had his little moment at the end where he starts to fully realize, like, oh, they are like people. They do have like emotions and stuff. And you start to realize, and then, it's implied obviously at the end that he runs away with Rachel. And then obviously they end up having a kid and whatever, to set up the next movie. But, because in the second movie, you find out like he's kind of helping the replicants in their like uprising, kind of. that they're starting to form. So it's like he went from being a Blade Runner hunting down replicants to, you know, helping them.
Yeah. I mean, some aspects I agree with you, others not so much. Like, didn't they drag him back in to be a Blade Runner again, and like forced him back to do it even though he was retired already?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, at the beginning of the movie, he's like, "I retired," but there was no sign of him being like, "Oh, against doing it." Well, there was, but like it was more or less of like, "I don't want to do it anymore. Like I'm retired. I'm done." But it wasn't like there was no sense of like, "I don't want to kill." Like he didn't seem to have much.
It wasn't a moral reason. It was just, I'm retired. I don't want to work anymore.
Yeah, right. Because like when it came down to it, that woman, he just shot her and didn't care. Like he's just like, yep, she's replicant. I retired her. But then when he finds out that they want him to hunt down Rachel as well, that's when he starts to maybe rethink things a little bit. And then it's like that final moment where Roy, I think was the name of the leader of the replicants he was killing, saves him and talks to him and stuff. You kind of, get the sense.
I liked that moment. Like, I didn't understand Roy even in the slightest. Like, why did he even strip down to his underwear and start chasing him around? And
why did he stab his hand? I still don't know why he stabbed his hand with a nail.
Because he was close to dying and his hand was locking up, so he did that to try to fix it. I don't know how that fixed it, though. I
was a little confused in that, but yeah.
But like, he was going around like chasing him like a madman. And I'm just like, aren't these guys not supposed to have emotions yet? I guess he does already, but still, he's just acting weird. What is the point of any of this?
Yeah. But
that last moment where he saves him and he's just like, what is happening? Is he going to kill him himself? And he's just, oh no, it's him like showing him his final moments.
Yeah.
And there was the one line before he started hunting him, he's like, well, time to die. And then he repeats that line as he's dying. It's like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Thought it was clever.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, that's probably one of the best moments of that first movie, I think. But yeah, and I think I told you this before we watched it, but there's like different versions of this movie.
Yeah.
So
Netflix final cut, right?
Right. So there's the theatrical cut, and then there was the director's cut, I think, and then the final cut, which is typically seen as like the best one. So
the first one of those has terrible narration.
Yeah. So the original theatrical cut of this movie had narration by Harrison Ford, basically like, inner monologue type stuff. And it's like really bad, like corny, dumb, because I think the whole point was that the studio didn't want to release the movie the way it was, because they were like, it's too confusing, audiences won't get it, we need, and then so their solution was to do that. And Harrison Ford thought it was such a terrible idea that he recorded the lines badly on purpose, in hopes that they wouldn't use it, and then they did it anyways.
Great.
So I like made sure that the version that was on Netflix wasn't. I don't think that version is anywhere anymore. I don't think that I don't know. But like literally there's like the moment where the guy is like saved him and he's like, he gives his speech and then he's like, there's like his voice is there just like, no, I don't know why he saved me, but blah, 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 blah. Like, it's like, it just like ruins the moment. Like it's such an interesting moment. And then you just hear Harrison Ford's voice being like, oh, well. And then there was also a version, I don't know if it was the original version or the director's, I don't know. There was also a version where it actually showed, I think it might have been the theatrical cut, because that version also had his voiceover. So I think that one was that one where it showed because this ends with him and Rachel like leaving in the elevator, right?
Right.
The movie, but there was actually like a shot of them like driving a car somewhere, riding away together, and it's like his voice there, like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but we'll see. Well, like, I don't know, something dumb like that. But it was like just kind of like a cheesy like ending instead of like
right.
But one thing that was added, I don't know which version this was added in. It might have been just Final Cut. Which is weird, is the weird unicorn dream.
Oh yeah.
So the director wanted to add that in like years later in one of the later versions for some reason, and I know why. So the origami guy who just makes little origami things throughout the whole movie?
Right.
At the end of the movie, he leaves an origami like unicorn behind.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think originally was just supposed to symbolize like, oh yeah, that's just his like thing that he does, or like just it was like he found it on the floor just to show like, oh, he was here. He knows that guy was there, and that like, and he didn't take Rachel in, so it was kind of like a hint towards like, that guy like let her go or something.
Yeah, like his silent support, kind of.
Yeah, like, right. That's at least what I got out of it. But the whole point was, and there's all these theories about whether Deckard is himself a replicant.
Yeah, I thought of that too at one point.
I don't know. I prefer to think that he's not. Like, I feel like it just makes more sense, at least to me. But the director wanted that unicorn thing to be in there as a hint of like, oh, he has like unicorn dreams or something, and this guy knows that he has unicorn dreams because they were like implanted in his brain because he's a replicant or something, and that's why he left the unicorn behind or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So that's why he added those unicorn dream things.
So the director
was high, yes.
Oh, I was going to say wants to make it so that Deckard is a replicant.
I guess. It's either that or at least just throw another hint towards it. I don't know. I think it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, that theme continues in the second movie, doesn't it? When he's talking to old Deckard and he's like, if you were manufactured to begin with to be able to make this child. Yeah,
which, that's true. I mean, I like it's definitely an interesting thing of like, it's kind of interesting that they never answer the question of like if he is or not. It's just kind of like a thing where it's like, it's hinted at the fact that it could be possible, but it's like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, it's up for the audience to decide, which I always find interesting when movies do that sometimes. But it's also one of those things where it's like, does it matter if he is or not? You know what I mean? Like, he's still, living life as a human. Does it matter if he's a replicant or not? He's the same person either way, right? Because a replicant is so close to human that they're basically human. So at that point, does it matter? I think is the reason why they never fully answers it, because it's like,
yeah, I mean, especially in his case, when like Rachel has memories implanted, making her think that she's not a replicant, but he obviously doesn't have the limited lifespan, because we see him aged a lot 30 years later. Yeah. So
yeah,
he's even closer than any of the other replicants.
Well, that's one thing I'm wondering is, in the future, do the replicants still have the limited lifespan?
I think they mentioned that they don't, didn't they?
Because I think so in the second movie, because it's like a new company took over, like Tyrell Corporation fell, and then the one guy, Wallace, I think, took over and created his own company, like with the new models.
Yeah, creepy blonde guy with the floating eyeballs. Yeah.
Played by Jared Leto.
God, he's so creepy.
Yeah, he's very strange, and he's like got this like God metaphors all the time, where he's like, basically, I'm the God, and his creations are the angels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's so weird. Not as weird, not nearly as weird as the creator in the first, because the first movie had a guy who was like a replicant creator as well, but like he wasn't nearly as weird.
Wasn't his first line something about an angel shouldn't come into heaven without giving God a gift or whatever?
Yeah.
Just like, and you just see his silhouette as he's standing up, and I just see like hair and beard. I'm just like, oh, is he just gonna look like Jesus? I mean, a little bit, not quite, but it's there.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, and then there's a scene where he like goes to check the new model and like examine it, and that's so messed up. It's just like, it's disposable to him. He's like, yep, this model's good, okay, whatever, this, and then just kills it, or like stabs it, and you're just like, okay.
Replicants being able to give birth and just stabs her like in its stomach. It's just like, what is wrong with this man?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because to his mind, he's thinking like, yes, this isn't human, so it's fine. It's my own creation. I can do what I want with it. But it's like, I don't know. And then there's like the whole thing of like replicants, if they have a soul, kind of, because remember there's that one scene where he's like something about like, I've never retired something that was born before. She's like, what's the difference? And he's like, I guess being born means to have a soul, I guess. And it's so interesting. And I think the main character in the second movie in 2049 is much better than in the 100%. First movie. I really like Ryan Gosling in this movie. I don't know, because like it's established right away that he is in fact a replicant. So there's not really a mystery. Well, there is kind of a mystery, because you start to get
puppies.
Yeah, the dog's barking. Somebody must be home. So because you start to get, I think that's one thing that I like about the second movie better, is like there's an interesting mystery throughout it.
Yeah,
that makes you more invested. I think the first one is just kind of like, oh, you got to track down these replicants and kill them.
And you have a moral dilemma of, this one has memories and thinks she's real, and then, they're all starting to develop emotion.
Right. And then the 2049 takes the concept and a lot of the, the themes, and I think really does a lot more with them.
Well, I mean, they basically immediately introduced the idea that a replicant was born rather than made.
Right. And that, and the fact that the main character, who is a replicant, clearly has feelings and emotions, like full on. And then he even has, his like fake girlfriend thing.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
I mean, that's a whole interesting subplot for it, because it's like, it's, how do I put this? It's not even like a more human thing of like, yeah, he drinks a lot, or he, how do I say this without being weird about it?
Yeah.
Whatever, like, he hooks up a lot, that's what I want to say. Like, it's nothing like that even. It's just, he wants somebody to be affectionate with, or be affectionate with him, and so he has this holographic girlfriend. So it's not even like a physical thing, it's just, he wants to feel cared for. Which that he doesn't get outside, because everyone treats him like a machine.
Right. Because you see, like, there's clearly this prejudice against replicants. What's the term they had for them? Like skinhead or something like that?
Yeah, something like Skinner.
Yeah. And everybody kind of just, they're treated as, again, like kind of like second-class citizens, We see that they have some in this movie as basically sex slaves and like prostitutes and stuff. Like that's their entire like purpose, Like it's very messed up. But because again, people see them as machines, but when they have it's just really interesting how I don't know.
Well, I guess what I was getting at before is just like they could have made him, drink or hook up a lot, and that be his, thing that he's like a human. He has full emotions, and he's using this to de-stress. But they go with the much more like morally acceptable stuff of he's got this one thing that he does. He comes home and he has his holographic girlfriend to just feel cared for, which I think hits a lot more home than something physical like any of the other stuff that I listed.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. Yeah, and it's weird because it's like the program of Joy seems to have some sort of like level of feeling and emotion as well.
Yeah.
Like she's obviously just a holographic thing. It's not like she's like a physical, like a replicant. She's not, yet even that has like she learns and sort of learns to love him, you know what I mean? Like, because it's like you get the idea, like when she's destroyed for good, her files, she's gone forever pretty much. You actually feel it. Like you feel the loss, which is interesting because like, you could be like, oh, he could just go buy another one. It would look the same, have the same voice and stuff. But it's like, no, that new one doesn't have the same memories, didn't have the same experiences with him that the original one had. So it's not the same. It's like he actually develops a connection with it. Like it's, I don't know. It's interesting.
The whole way that the Joy is done is really good because it's just like they introduce another level of like the replicant dilemma, because like obviously the replicants are this physical thing that has developed emotion. It's like, oh, are they human or are they not? What counts? But then the Joy is, it's not even physical. It's just a hologram based on data, you assume. But it also seems to develop emotionality and stuff and personality. So it's like, okay, does it have it actually or not? Because they did it with the replicants, so do they do it with this hologram?
Right. It's like, it's because it's the same company that makes replicants also makes this hologram, because she keeps saying like, oh, are you happy with our product? Like maybe it's like if you couldn't afford to buy a replicant, you could just buy like this or something. Like maybe it's like supposed to be like a cheaper form of like the same product, similar type of product or something. I don't know.
Right.
It's weird.
But then they do the whole thing of they know that they're coming for him. They know that they're hunting him down. And she's like, delete me from the house. Delete me from the console in the house so that they can't get information from me, and just leave me in that thing in your pocket.
Yeah.
Which is such a good setup for her being able to die in a logical way.
Right.
Because it's like, if they didn't do that, they would just be a backup of her at home, right?
Yeah, and he could, like, if that was destroyed, he could go back home and get her back.
And they do a very good job of driving home that because this happened, she only has that thing, and if that thing gets destroyed, she is gone. And then they utilize it very well to break your heart.
yeah, and it's like the fact that it made you feel that emotional about essentially a fake, like, holographic girlfriend dying is insane. Yeah. But it's also weird because, like, so she gives him the name Joe, right? And then later on, when he's walking in the city, he sees, like, the holographic version of Joy. Like, that's essentially an advertisement where it's like, hey, you look lonely, whatever. And she's like, you look like a, what does she say? Like, I don't know.
Joe, I think.
Good Joe. So I'm like, is that just a name that's, like, programmed into the system, like, of Joy in every version? It almost makes it feel less, like, personal. Like, you're like, oh, she gave him a name. But then it's like, this gives the same name. And you're like, I don't know. It's, like, weird.
It's either, you can either interpret it as that, like, it's less personal. Like, yeah, it's just programmed into her. Or it's more personal because somehow this one also knows about it. Or it's like a weird coincidence that reminds him of it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. There's just a lot of interesting things. Like, I really love 2049. The original Blade Runner, I think, is decent. Like, it's okay. I'm never, like, that interested in rewatching it. I'm like, yeah, it was. There are parts that I like, but 2049 is, like, I don't know. It's just really good. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of, like, other aspects that I want to sort of bring up. I don't know. And then they do a really good job with the mystery aspect of it too. Like, for a while, you start to think, the character and the audience start to think, oh, Kay is the child that was, born,
Well, yeah, because
the memory,
the date, yeah,
he finds out that the memory, he's like,
which matches the carving on the bottom of the horse matches the date.
Well, and he goes and finds that horse was there, so he's like, wait, so this memory was real.
And it goes to the memory maker, and she confirms that it was real. Yeah,
a real memory. But you find out later that what she meant by that was, like, it was her memory. So she made the memory, and that's why he had it, right?
And they even, like, hint at that earlier with going through the data files and seeing that there was two people with identical DNA, one female, one male, but it says that the female died. So that you think, oh, that only leaves him.
So he's the male. But it turns out that they did that was on the records on purpose to, like, throw them off.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't know, they would never find the real one. Yeah. And also, like, I think when he finally does meet Deckard in this movie, I think his character is more interesting in this movie than his character was in the first movie. Like, just the whole backstory of, like, how they had to essentially hide the child and he had to leave and never meet his child was honestly like tragic. Because, like, at first you kind of think, you're like, oh, so he didn't want to meet his kid, like, whatever, okay. But then then he explains it and you realize, oh no, that was part of the plan to protect the kid.
He didn't want to find his kid because if he found him, that means other people could find him.
Which that makes the final moment of the movie so, like, much more, powerful. Like, it's just like he finally meets his daughter and it's just, like, such a nice moment. Like, it's interesting how, like, simple the movie is at the end. Like, it doesn't end with some big battle. It doesn't end with the uprising starting, It just ends with, like, Kay brings him to meet his daughter for the first time. And then he just kind of is, like, laying on the steps in the snow, That's it. It's nice, simple, like, I don't know. I kind of like that.
Yeah. I also really liked before Kay and Deckard start talking, they're fighting, and they're in the weird concert room. And the only reason Deckard is just punching him over and over again, and Cadence is just taking it because he doesn't want to fight him. But
right.
The only reason Deckard stops is because I don't know what the actual song is called, but I just remember the lyrics were "Saved by the Bell," which is so funny to me. That's so clever.
Oh yeah, see, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, I guess it's true.
He's literally saved by the bell.
He's just like, I like this song. And then he goes to get him whiskey, and he pours some on the floor for the dog to drink.
Mm-hmm. Is it real? I don't know. Why don't you ask him?
Right, which I think that's an interesting little moment too, because it kind of shows that like even he doesn't care if it's real or not. He's like, doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Because he didn't care that Rachel was real, or I doubt he cares if he's real.
He doesn't. Yeah, he might not even know if he's real or not, but it doesn't matter to him because, like, technically they're all real, right? It's just some are born, some are artificially made. So technically they're all real, and that's, but it's just, yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. One thing I did find a little weird was when you find out like he finally meets the people who are doing like the uprising or whatever. And it turns out that prostitute was part of the uprising. So it's interesting. Like, what is she doing all the way in Vegas? Or were they in Las Vegas? I think they were, because that's where Deckard was in Las Vegas.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's where they found him. So I'm guessing they still were there. I don't know. I just thought that was weird. But yeah. I really like this movie.
The second one. First one not so much, but man.
Yeah, it's got a lot of interesting ideas and some good moments. But overall, it's just and Deckard and Rachel like falling in love was weird too, because there was the one specific scene that was so uncomfortable to watch.
When she goes to leave the apartment and he stops her, that was horrid.
I was like, this is just a little rapey.
No.
Not really liking this. I'm like, you could have done this so much. You could have done it to where like she actually like stayed and wanted to, and like actually make it more naturally fall in love or something, like in a more normal way. You just had to do this and make me kind of not like him as much. Yeah,
not at all. No, like the whole point of it, wasn't it to show like, no, like her going, no, I'm a replicant, I'm not allowed to feel these things, and him convincing her that that doesn't matter. Like, that's what they wanted to do, right?
That's fine. That's not a bad idea of like, oh, she says she doesn't want to, but she really does. She just doesn't think she should because she's a replicant, whatever. Yeah. That's fine if you want to do that. It just wasn't, if that's the case, that was not portrayed very well.
It was like, so... hated it. No.
Yeah, that... I was watching it and I got that scene started and I was like, wait a minute, is this I was like, oh, I forgot about this scene. I was like, oh no.
I forgot about the worst scene ever.
So uncomfortable. Yeah. That's another reason why I like Kay as a main character too, because he's not like that. But yeah, and another thing about these movies, especially I think the second one, is visually it's really good too.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think a lot of the cinematography and just everything looks great in the second movie. Even the first movie to an extent, but I don't think it's as good. But yeah, the 2049 just looks really good.
Yeah, I keep remembering the what'd you say his name was? Wallace? Blind guy? Creepy blind guy?
Yeah.
his like weird office room.
Yeah.
It's so cool looking. Because
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you walk upstairs to it, and it's like surrounded by water with a little platform, and you just see the fish jumping in the background, and he starts talking, oh yeah, that one's a courageous one. Doesn't care if it's gonna hit landfall anytime. It's like, what are you
Were they
talking
even?
about?
Yeah, yeah. Were they even fish? They looked like not. They looked like robot things to me. Oh, maybe it was fish. I don't know. Maybe I was just looking at it wrong. I don't know.
For all I know, it could have been a hologram. Like,
I mean, either that or they were like fake fish replicants, because we know it's hard to come by real animals in this world.
right. And apparently wood as well.
Real wood, yeah. It's like everything is fake now. Everything's artificial.
Even the people. Dun,
Even
dun, dun.
some of the people, yeah. Yep.
Even creepy guy's eyes.
Yeah.
Like, those floating eyeballs of his were just made to make him even more creepy, right? So that
Probably.
he could just like watch everything with these weird, like ominously floating eyeballs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oh, and I love how like he had the one replicant that was like his number one, and she always was like, "I'm the best one." Like, Love, I think was her name.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that she's not very loving, she's very vicious.
Yeah, imagine that.
But like the scene, like where he kills her is pretty brutal too. He's just like choking her under the water, like
Yeah.
Like even though she's like a villain and she's like trying to kill him, like I almost feel bad for her in that scene where she's like choking while underwater,
I mean,
can't breathe. But it's like it's just
crushed
brutal.
his girlfriend under her foot.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. It's like I'm like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. Like seeing the look in her face, but then I'm like, oh wait, yeah, she's a total bitch. Never mind. Yeah, kill her.
She's. Or like the scene with the police chief, I think she was.
Oh, she crushes the glass in her hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then she needs to get the facial recognition scan, so she drags her up to do it and just drops her, and her head bangs on the way down off the desk.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
I mean, she's already dead at that point, but still, like...
Yeah, it's just insult to injury.
Yeah. Yeah, she was kind of a cool character. Like, because you could tell that, like, she didn't really have the best, like, views overall of, like, you know, because obviously she was all about keeping order. She was like, we can't let anybody know that there's, like, a replicant that can give birth or whatever. It would ruin society, blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. But, like, you could tell she genuinely has good intentions, and like she actually cares about Kay and everything.
Yeah,
because like she knows that, she finds out that like he's, you know, the kid, even though he's not, but they think he is, and she's like, all right, I'll give essentially like, I'll let you go, they're gonna hunt you down, like I'll give you a head start, but you know.
Does she actually find out, or does she just believe him when he says that he took care of it?
I don't know. Like, see, that's what I'm trying, because she says that like he's going to be hunted down or whatever. So I'm guessing she must know like that what he meant by that was that like he is the kid, because he thought he was at the time. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. But
yeah. Oh, then there's that weird scene in the apartment where she's just like, you know, I sometimes forget that you're not human, yeah. And then goes, what happens if I finish that? Like gesturing to the bottle of alcohol, I think. It's like, oh, what? What's happening?
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
She was just a very middle ground character of like, yeah, she's definitely affected by the stigma against the replicants, but she never like attacks him over it and even helps him out a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No. Blade Runner 2049 is a really good example, I think, of like sequels that are better than the original.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that's a difficult thing to accomplish. I feel like it doesn't happen that often, you know? Like, there's a few examples I can think of, like that. Terminator 2, I think, is better than Terminator. The Empire Strikes Back, you know, I would consider better than the original Star Wars, even though they're very close. But, you know, but yeah, this is a good example of that. And even a sequel that came out so many years later, too, which is very rare.
How many years later was it?
Well, the original was 1982, and 2049 came out in 2017. So about what would that be? Like 35 years? No, yeah, something like that.
82, yeah, over 30, almost 35.
Yeah, so 35, because 82, 2017, yeah, 35 years. And it takes place 30 years later, but
right,
because, you know, the first one was 2019, this one's 2049. I was thinking about that. I'm like, what about when we get to the year? Like, obviously, we're past the year 2019 now.
Mm-hmm.
But like, when we get to the year 2049, you know, I'm gonna watch this movie and be like, this is 2049. I'll be like 50 years old, but you know,
I keep thinking that 2049 was made like only 2 years prior to when the first one was set, and so they had like the full experience of, yeah, we're making a sequel to this movie set in 2019, 2 years from now. So they had the full experience of just, oh yeah, they didn't predict any of this, right?
Well, I mean, movies like that aren't necessarily supposed to predict the future, because obviously it's just kind of like, imagine if this is what the future was like, you know?
Right.
Like, what if this happened in the future, yeah.
I just always find it funny, because most of those future movies were made in, like, you know, 80s or 90s, and it's the far, far future of 2020. Like, oh.
Well, it's like, you could make the future be like way further, just so it's less like close, you know, like that. Realistically, that's not that far. Like, that's like 30 some years, you know, like it's not that far in the future. But it's like I never actually watched all the Back to the Future movies, but like, I think the second one is they like go to the future, and it's like 2015. So like. And whenever we got to 2015, I remember everybody talking about like, oh, we're in 2015 now. That's the year of
gonna get hover skateboards or wherever they have. Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, that was in that movie, I think. Yeah. I'd never seen the second. I saw like half of the first movie, and that's it. So, but I just think that's funny. Yep. Or like the book 1984, which was written in the 50s, maybe? I don't remember. Wait, actually, I'm curious. When was... Because obviously the book takes place in 1984.
Shocker.
But it was written in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so he just took the year that it was written and flipped the 8 and the 4 around, I see. But it's just funny because, like, it's basically, you know, it's like this dystopian world of, like, it's the where the phrase Big Brother comes from. Like, Big Brother is always watching and stuff like that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, but, like, it takes place in the year 1984.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, obviously, you know, now we're so many years after 1984, and yeah, well, it wasn't accurate.
I didn't realize the term Big Brother came from something in the 50s. That's like a really good future sight. Because the whole idea of Big Brother is like, you know, they're always watching, you know, the technology is monitoring you 24/7.
Yeah.
Which arguably is happening right now.
Right. It wasn't happening in 1984.
No, obviously not. But for someone to think of that in the 50s is very impressive.
Well, actually, it's the 80s or the 40s second, because it came out in 1948. Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy. But yeah, but I just always like things like that where it's like, yep, this takes place in this year, and then you actually pass that year. At the time, it seems like such a distant future. Because I mean, like, think about it now, like 2049, for instance, that seems really far from now. But
I mean,
you know, it's like
not really.
Slightly less than 30 years. Like, it's like,
yeah, I'm gonna reach
28
in my
years.
lifetime.
Like, yeah, we will live, well, unless, you know, you die before then, but unless I die or under the age of 50, then I will live to the year 2049.
Yeah, it's gonna, I don't know. I think if I ever made something set in the future, like any story or whatever, just be like, yeah, fucking 40,000 ZF era.
Yeah, you just
to be like, no way are we ever gonna reach it ever. And so if nobody can argue with me on it.
If we ever do reach it, that story probably won't be known by anybody by that point anyways. Yeah. Well, it's like Dune, for instance, I think takes place like thousands of years later. I don't know if they have like the same numbering system of like the years or whatever, but I don't know. I watched the movie, but which actually that movie, the Dune, the one that just came out, was directed by the same director who directed 2049.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to watch more of his movies because I think the directing of 2049 is really good.
I just realized I have no idea of the concept of Dune either. My brain, anytime I think of Dune, just thinks of sand dunes.
I mean,
and I know it's set in the future, so I think like futuristic sand rovers, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, like it has to do. There's like a specific planet. I forget the name of the planet, but it's like a very desolate type of planet. Their book originally came out in like the 50s, I think. The original book, from as far as I know. But yeah, it's like, and it's like the desert has like a resource that's like very vital for like space travel. It's like spice or whatever is what they call it.
Spice?
Yeah. And that's what like everyone is after it. So a lot of it the story has to do with like people wanting different like factions and stuff wanting to like get the resources from the planet or something. That's part of the story. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's like one of the main things. One of the main sort of conflicts is over the ownership of this planet. But
okay.
So it's called Dune because it's, you know, on a desert planet. But
in sand dunes, obviously you're gonna call it Dune. Why not?
Yeah.
It's not like that's stupid or anything.
It's not. I don't know. Ask the original guy who wrote the book. I mean, he's probably dead now, but you know.
I mean, probably.
He was born. He heard that I don't know when he was born, but the book was written in the 50s, so you know.
Yeah, so if he wrote that when he was born, which is unlikely, he'd be at least 70.
Yeah, which you could still be alive at 70, but you know, it's unlikely that he wrote it when he was born.
Probably he was at least in his 20s or something.
At least,
more like 90, possibly over 100.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, I think we're veering away from the topic of Blade Runner now.
Yeah,
so,
for a long time now.
So yeah, overall thoughts are that the first one is meh.
Yeah, bland.
And the second one is really, really good.
Yeah, it's pretty dang good.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. Do you have any other things to say about the movie?
No, I think I covered it. I'm all good.
Yeah, I think I'm good too. Yeah, the unicorn scene from the first movie is still weird, but you know, whatever. That's the thing. The first movie, like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, yeah, that could have been done better. That could have been done better. But the second one, not really. Like, I feel like there's nothing that I really dislike about 2049.
Yeah, it's pretty solid all around.
Like, it's, yeah. And it doesn't feel as long. Like, the first movie feels so much longer than it is. And 2049 doesn't, despite the fact that it's, like, decently longer. It's crazy. But yeah, anyways, I guess it's about time to close. So thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of WABAN. Expect a new episode of WABAN every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. You can listen to it on multiple different platforms, that being YouTube. Our YouTube channel is called WABAN. There should be a link in the description to that if you're listening on an audio platform. You can also find it on multiple different audio platforms. That includes Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public. Next week, we are going to continue our discussion, our TV show discussion on Legend of Korra. We're going to talk about Season 2. So definitely be excited for that. The week after that will actually be the Saturday after Groundhog Day. So we might review the movie Groundhog Day. And then the week after that, we'll do Korra again. And then the week after that, we might be doing The Princess Bride. I don't know. We have a general plan of what we might be doing. So that's definitely get excited for that.
More than we usually do.
Yeah. And also, we have some gaming videos on our YouTube channel on WABAN. So if you want to watch me play Portal and Portal 2, and then probably other video games in the future, and suck at playing those games, and watch Cub kind of, struggle through it with me. You can go watch some of those videos. Anyways, that's about all. So thank you all for listening to WABAN. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.